So we have some brief announcements, and then we'll get going. So Layer 1 money is due today. So if you want those discounted tickets, please give me the cash, or you can PayPal it to me by the end of the day. That is also acceptable. And by the end of the day, I mean like end of the business day. It's not midnight for you college students. Come on guys, let's go. I gotta pay for all of that stuff somehow. Alright, e-board elections. So we are going to be doing e-board elections. These are the positions that we're looking to fill. So there are some returning e-board members who are probably going to look at these positions, but don't let that deter you. So basically, the way the process is going to work is if you're interested in being on e-board, then send me an email, and I will put you on the list. And we are going to vote next Monday night. So we don't do the voting here in the meeting because not only does it take away from speaker time, but there's a bunch of people that are non-members that really just don't care. So we do the elections, but they're completely open to you. They're not in any way closed or not visible. So you are welcome to come to the e-board meeting and vote in the election process if you are a member. That meeting is going to be Monday next week at 9 p.m. because that's when we have our e-board meetings. We didn't like put that there, like, oh, nobody will come to this if we put it at 9 p.m. That's the only time that we're all free. So at 9 p.m. in the telecom lab, which is room C435? 36. Basically, if you take this elevator, the one over here, up, it's the first door on your left. And that's where we have our e-board meetings, and that's where we'll be doing the elections. And then hopefully, if all goes according to plan, the next day I will announce who our new e-board is. And as I said before, I'll be stepping down as president, but I'll still be around next year. So you guys can't get rid of me that easily. But yeah, so send me an email if you're interested. And if you have a specific position in mind, go ahead and let me know. If not, that's okay too. Occasionally, we'll put you into a position, or if all the positions are filled, we'll talk to you and see if there's anything that you'd be interested in helping with, or that kind of stuff. So as you can see up there, president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer are the 4 core. Those are the required. And then all the other positions are positions that we have found to be helpful. So the treasurer job is big enough that generally you need 2 of them. Marketing does a lot of flyers, also in charge of the Facebook. UBSS is, that's our governing organization. Basically they're the ones that give us the money. And so we need someone to interact with them. I think most of those are pretty self-explanatory. Media records the talks. And then there's Puzzle Master, which, is Zero here today?
Hi.
Hey, Zero.
Why aren't you in your
He's the Puzzle Master. I mean, you're welcome to apply for Puzzle Master, but you're going to have to fight him to the death for it. And you're only allowed to use slide rules.
But he won't do anything until we get him an outfit.
Right, if he wants a spandex puzzle or Riddler costume. Installfest moved. So, we're not having Installfest this Friday. It will be next Friday, because otherwise no one would actually be here, because everyone's at CCDC in Texas.
Yeah.
Because they took first at regionals. I don't know if we announced that, but good for you guys. Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, our speaker this week is a close friend of mine, and he has been working on a project for a while. So it's Ara, and he's going to be talking about his high altitude balloon project, which it borders on the obsessive. Like, if you ask him how much he's spent on this and how much time he's put into this, it's a little disturbing. And when he was attempting, he'll tell the story of the recovery on this latest project, but it was intimidating to be near because he had such a single-minded focus that I knew that he was going to be successful. So let's give him a round of applause.
should have logged out of that.
So could you set up on palm tree?
All right. So I've literally had less than an hour to make this slideshow. I'm sorry. It was really short notice. I'll try my best. So I'm Marco. I'm from Null Space Labs, the hackerspace in downtown LA. There's one here, Mag Labs. There's another one in Fullerton, 23B. And we built a high altitude balloon. What is a high altitude balloon, or a HAB? It's essentially a balloon tied to a parachute, tied to a payload. The balloon is a very special balloon. It costs about $100, depending on how heavy you want to lift. And it rises up to about 100,000 feet, up to about a little above 100,000 feet if you really want to, depending on how much helium you fill in it. And the balloon expands so big and just bursts, and it's designed to burst at that certain altitude. And then your payload and your parachute comes screaming down until there's enough air, it catches the air, and slowly comes down and lands. And inside that payload, by the way, you want to be transmitting where you are, right? Because you want to track it and find it. The world's really big and all. I'll get into that in just a second. So, is it legal? The answer is yes, but you have to follow FAA regulations, Part 101. And if you don't follow Part 101, you have to go get your payload inspected and approved, and you got to get all these waivers, and it's a big headache. Is it cheap? Not really, but yeah. I'll get into that in a little bit. Why? Science wallpapers. I just did it for fun. So the way I kind of approach this, and I'm kind of going to go into if you want to do this yourself, but this is the process I went through. The first thing I figured out was what's my budget. I've done this twice now. The first time I spent way too much money. It was about $1,200. This time it was actually, I did the numbers, and it was about $800. So you can do it for a decent amount of money. What's your goal? The goal for us was to take some cool pictures and be able to have a reliable tracked payload. And do your research, design your concepts. I mean, this is like engineering bread and butter. Design it, prototype it, test it, test it, test it, test it. I cannot emphasize testing enough. There's simulating, launching, and then paperwork and recovery. So I'm going to go through all these. Cost, MIT students have done it for $150, but they kind of, I don't want to say cheated. They got like their balloon for free. No, they bought their balloon on eBay for like 25 bucks. They got their helium donated. So you can, if you scrounge around the school, you'll probably be able to find some resources you can tap into and maybe do it for about 150 bucks. And their design was actually pretty simple. It's a cell phone with a custom program on it that would just call or text you GPS where it is. Pretty simple. Medium cost ones are about, I should really put that at $800, where you have a radio that just transmits back GPS. And there's different mediums you could use. A lot of people, like in the UK, are on a certain frequency where you don't need to be a licensed ham radio operator to use it, and you can just transmit out the GPS coordinates. Here we have ham radio frequencies. If anyone's familiar with the APRS system, it's a bunch of radio towers all around the country that are listening on this one frequency for GPS packets. And once the GPS packet comes in, it reports it, and it's all online. Gonna slow down a bit. And if you're rich, there's way more options. I'm not going to get into that. Environment. So a lot of those people who put cell phones in, like if I were to put my cell phone in there, it probably would work. But space is very cold. It can get down to about -60 degrees Celsius. And there's about 1% atmosphere up there. So electronic parts can actually easily not only freeze to death and break, but can also overheat because they can't dissipate the heat with convection. Convection. because there's only conduction and radiation. Radiation is just going to be big glowing red and emitting all the heat. And the flight can last pretty long. So it depends on how you fill it up. This last one we did, we filled for it to last 2 hours in total, but people have done 4 to 5 to even this last weekend, someone did one where it went over 24 hours and went from England and landed in Austria. It's really windy. One of the best tests I've heard is if your payload is truly ready, you can kick it down some stairs, and if it survives, it's ready to go up. And you also have to think about when you launch it, where it's going to land. It can land in a lake, it can land on mountains. Mountains suck, lakes are even worse, because if you're not ready for it, you're going to fry all your electronics. And it's just going to float around. And then there's some regulations on how heavy it could be, but you guys can look that up. I don't want to get into that stuff. So the concept's really simple. You need a balloon, that's your propulsion. You need a parachute so you don't die when you hit the ground. Then you have payload options. So you can go, GPS and a radio that transmits directly to you. You can have a radio that receive from the payload where it is. You can have a beacon, and a lot of, I forget what they call it. I don't know if it's fox hunting or whatnot, but a lot of people when they do rocketry will put transmitters that just chirp, that make a really loud sound if you're listening to that frequency. And when it goes up and lands, they have directional antennas that they can aim, and if it's louder, it's in that direction. There's some different techniques, but you can use a compass and figure out where it is by triangulating it. And then the third option is GPS and cell phone. And then you want to send something up, like a camera would be nice. Take some cool pictures. Log data. Data is really interesting. Like Geiger counters people have flown, so you can measure radiation as you go up. Temperature, barometer, whatnot. The balloon is going to probably cost you anywhere from, really, if you want to do a really small balloon and a really tiny payload, $30. But it's probably going to cost you about $100 if you're going to fly something fairly large that weighs a few pounds. So the picture on the right is the primary payload that we flew. It's essentially a GPS all the way on the left. That sends a GPS packet to the radio. The radio encodes it and then sends it out over the radio. It's on ham radio frequencies. And then we have our own ground stations. We had a bunch of people with cars, and we trained them to essentially listen on this frequency, decode the packet, figure out where it is. So we had a really good coverage regardless of what towers were around us, because we didn't want to rely on the APRS system, which has repeaters every now and then around mountains that pick it up, but you really should be able to decode it on your own. Batteries. We use AA Energizer lithium batteries. Those things are amazing. They have great battery life, and they can survive negative 40 degrees Celsius, where most alkaline batteries don't. A lot of people in the UK do this, and they have a great community and network that do it. And I'm me and a few other people in Alabama, are the only people with radio stations waiting, hoping that one of their payloads will make it over the ocean to us. But this implies actually a little false. I mean, we have our own radio system, which is APRS, but there's not as much altitude ballooning going on here as there is there. The payload, the second option payload you have is that direction finding beacon. The one on the bottom is actually the one that was supposed to fly, but broke literally an hour before we were supposed to let it fly, but there was actually a good solution. I'll get into that. Yeah, it's a custom design. It's really simple, especially if you're taking an RF class here in electrical. You could totally build one. It's really cool. Yeah, so compass and a good map can really lead to finding your balloon. And it's really simple. It just transmits. There's nothing that can really go wrong other than it being disconnected or some bad design you had. And the third option is cell phone based. The one up top is the one I found that's really common. It's a cell phone that's running some Java program that just queries a GPS module for where it is, then texts you. The one below was actually built by Charlie and Em at Null Space Labs. It's a custom design GPS and it's GPS and cell phone. And it's actually really cheap. It's like 60 or 60 bucks or so, something like that. Camera, Canon has their PowerShot series, and a lot of their cameras are hacked. Like the firmware's been hacked. So you can use CHDK and actually write your own custom scripts on like, okay, take a picture for wait 30 seconds, take some video, wait 30 seconds, take a picture, whatever you want to do. And then you can mount servos and whatnot if you really want to, and move it around, whatever you want to do. Science is cool. This is built by Jeremy, also at Null Space Labs. It's a little board that takes barometric pressure, temperature, gyroscope, so you know how it's like tumbling around, acceleration, a magnetometer so you can see, Earth's magnetic fields. So some really cool science. So it logged it all to an SD card. So once we recovered it, we pull the SD card out, pop it in our computer, and we can see all the data it took as it went up. Okay. Wow. That went way too fast, I'm sorry. So Havix 1 was about 3 years ago, September 12th, 2010. We launched it. It was a lunch bag that weighed 6 pounds, way too damn heavy. The helium itself cost like $200. And we had similar equipment. It just wasn't very well designed. It was very like hacked together. And we simulated where it would go. We made sure not to go in those green blocks, which are military airspace. You don't want to go there. And so when it landed, or when we let it go, that picture right there, that's when it last transmitted, and then the radio died. Yeah, it sucks, especially when you're like, that's $1,000 of my money in the sky. And it went away, and we never saw it again, and we never will see it again. The odds are no one's going to run it. It's landed somewhere. If you find it, by the way, there's a $600 reward. It's in Kingman, Arizona, somewhere. Landed on some mountain where no one is ever going to go to for thousands of years, and it's just going to rot there. And it's a horrible thing to think about. Then there was Havix 2. This project started maybe a year ago, and it's kind of been a slow track project for me at least, to the point where I just had to pick a day to launch it and just kind of work to that. And what we ended up doing was distributing out a lot of the work. So all the radios and all the equipment that went into it, everyone had a part. Someone, like I threw out an email that said, fly whatever you want. If you're interested, I'll give you mass. So there's mass and space that you can essentially buy, not really buy, but ask for in this payload. And I promised to deliver a radio that would be the primary guaranteed to work radio. If anyone else wanted to fly an experimental radio to test their radio to see if it would work, if it were to fly alone, they're more than welcome to. So I delivered what we call the Alpha radio. It's going to go Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Alpha was an APRS radio that was tested, and the design was modified. And then we had the Bravo radio. Remember that transmitter I showed you earlier? We said that broke. This was the hacked together in an hour version of that. It was someone took my Arduino that I had in my box and their radio and soldered it all together. Wrote the code literally an hour before launch, and it worked perfectly throughout the entire flight. It's amazing, truly amazing. It was our flight at the 23B shop. I think he goes to the Mag Lab every now and then, right? And then the Charlie radio, which was the cell phone based radio, so it would transmit where it is. We also had enough weight, we were actually underweight when we were about to fly it. And you want to match your weight because the amount of helium you fill into that balloon has to match the payload mass so that it actually follows the simulations you've done. And if you fly lighter, it's going to move up faster, and now you're going to land not where you think you're going to land. So we added extra batteries to keep the thing going. Science payload is that little tiny thing next to my tablet. That was the big picture up there. We set that to go, dropped it in there, didn't even have to think twice about it. Worked great. And then we assembled a team. We had a lot of people, maybe I would say more than 20, 30 people who showed up. A lot of them were just, we had a lot of support, people who would show up and just help us get things together, move stuff around. And the team that built each part that went into this, everyone did their role. We had checklists. Checklists are very important. Last time, if we had followed a checklist, we would have realized that there was a problem with the radio before we let it go. And NinjaTel ended up showing up and helping us out. I don't know if you guys remember DEF CON. Cool people. They had radios. So all sorts of vans and cars set up with radios to decode and talk to, or not really talk to, but listen to the payload that's flying. We weighed up how much the balloon was lifting it, made sure all our measurements were right, and then in that right shot, we let it go. And it didn't die over our heads. It actually ended up that all the electronics worked perfectly. Nothing went wrong. Except the balloon was faulty and burst to about, I would say, okay, it burst at 76,000 feet. It was actually supposed to burst at 100,000 feet, so about 2/3 of the time that it was supposed to fly. So it worked, and that's my face being very upset that it has burst early. And it was supposed to land right next to Lake Havasu on the 95, but instead it burst early and landed in those mountains to the left of it. Turtle Mountains. It's a wilderness area. You can't drive into it, and you have to hike into it. And it's like 100 degrees, and it sucks. So we were able to take data, do a little bit of math, and interpolate where it would land. We entered wind into the equation, and figured the best landing site was somewhere between that little triangle. And outside of that, that big ring is where we estimated about 80% sure that's where it would have landed. And as you can see on the bottom left hand, the predictor landing site, and then right above it is where it actually landed 50 meters away. So we actually guessed the path where it landed pretty well. We had tracking throughout the entire flight up until it was about 1,000 meters off the ground, where it dipped below the valley and we could no longer hear it. But with a little math, we figured it out. And 4 days ago, a team, the ArcLight and the San Bernardino Search and Rescue team, decided to have a little bit of fun and went out to the Turtle Mountains and hiked 13 miles and found it. We painted it pink, and so you could really easily see it, but it really took, the sun really took its toll. Like, it turned almost white by the time they had recovered it 2 weeks later. And then it brought back these beautiful pictures. Tons of beautiful, beautiful pictures. And then we have, mountains, whatnot. All of these, I'll post up a link. It looks so cool when you get it back. It's almost surreal. And I would say the lessons learned from this, team up, peer review. Peer review is very important. Have people look over your circuits. If anyone had looked over my first circuit for the Havix 1, they would have realized that I had designed a bad power regulation system fairly easily. And then test. You can do cold temperature testing. You can do a vacuum test if you really have the equipment to do it. But it's important to simulate the conditions because it may work nice in your living room, but it's not going to work very well 100,000 feet above your head in a very cold vacuum. This talk was a bit rushed, and I had a lot of information in there. If you come to layer 1, I'll be giving a talk about how to set up your electronics to be better rated and how to really design a good circuit and set up your equipment to, work when you're up there. So come to layer 1. And if you have any questions, I can answer them now. And there's also a party tonight at Null Space Labs. If you want to come, we'll have the payload there. I didn't bring it here today, I'm sorry. But the payload will be there. We'll have a good time. Yeah, that's it.
What data did you collect?
What day what?
What data did you collect? Like your
Data.
and like radiation
Oh.
and all that.
Oh, all that. All these pictures came in 4 days ago. Like, this is all brand new.
What else?
The data itself.
Yeah.
I have it all in Excel. We're gonna have that all publicly available soon, but the data looked really good. We started off at about 35 degrees Celsius, and the internal temperature dipped down to about -5. which is not cold at all. It's actually pretty warm. The outside, we didn't actually have an outside temperature probe, so we didn't really measure what it was outside, but we estimated about -20°C. We didn't measure radiation this time. We're going to do it on Havix 3. The magnetometer data looks really weird because as soon as it's let go, suddenly the magnetometer just looks like that. It just looks like garbage. And that's mostly probably because it's been just tumbling around and the sensor updates really slowly. So if you're moving around really quickly, you're just going to get a bunch of noise. So that was interesting.
So this is an actual picture?
Yeah, these are actual pictures. This is from that camera right there. I have tons and tons, like it took a picture every 30 seconds, so all that is on Flickr. Huh? Oh, what?
There is a YouTube video.
Oh, there is a YouTube video. Yeah, that's right. Someone made one. I'll set it up in the background while we somewhere in there. So Havix 3 is going to be a little crazy. We're gonna attempt to drop a rover. By the way, there are like 1,000 crotch shots before we let it go because we were working on it and it was like kind of fun. So this is going to be like, wow, very appropriate music. Yeah, I'm going. There we go. Okay. This is right.
Fewer crotch shots. Yeah.
There we go.
Just enough crotch shots.
They're really beautiful pictures. I mean, it's so surreal.
How often did you take a picture? Every how many seconds?
30.
Where is it? In lights?
Yeah. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
What was the interval of pictures?
Every 30 seconds.
You don't see the timestamp on the number.
Yeah, the next one we're planning on flying an HD camera so we can get some nice video too. And we didn't even burst at the highest altitude we could have. We only did 2/3 the height we were planning on it.
How much is HD video storage in 8 hours of recording? That's
Well, the whole flight is 2 hours. So 2 hours of HD recording is probably going to be like, okay, it's going to be a few gigs. Definitely.
yeah.
It's one of those things you test, right?
You're probably connected to like solar power or something?
Yeah, in fact, the power actually isn't a huge problem as long as you budget the battery. The problem with solar is it's going to be a little bit hard to predict where you're actually getting the solar energy from. So if you're spinning around a lot and you only have one plane, you're not going to be picking up a lot of solar. But yeah, if you surround the whole thing, it totally could work. In fact, solar would be great for when it's landed and you want it to continue operating so you can get near it and listen to it. Even if you showed up 2 weeks later, right? Where our batteries died 70 hours after we had launched it. So there's quite a bit of battery life. Use some solar. Yeah, it's like Inception, I think. What? Oh. So that's where the balloon burst. So now we're tumbling back down to Earth. You go pretty fast, actually. It's a couple 100 miles an hour because there's nothing to stop you. There's no air. There's very little air, I should say. No, you don't need any heat shields.
Did you pick that up on the Excel?
Yeah, the accelerometers do pick up the free fall. And then the hard problem is the accelerometer is recording raw data, so we haven't actually gone through and normalized the vector to find where gravity is. So all you see when it bursts and falls is just because it's measuring X, Y, Z axis and it's tumbling. So. It flew up for about an hour. It was supposed to fly for an hour and a half up, but it flew for an hour up and then it took 20 minutes to fall back down. So it came down at about 7 meters per second or 15 miles an hour or so, 14 miles an hour. We're about to hit the ground very soon. Yeah, we're somewhere like way out there going, oh crap, it's landing in the mountain. That's last shot.
Could you see it?
Yeah. So we were live tracking it as it was flying, and we could tell where it was going. And we knew it burst early. We knew it was going to land in a very, very bad place as soon as it burst. And that's about it. I mean, you get, it's just blue sky because it landed straight up. Music's pretty epic. Yeah.
Arthur, talk more about the environmental test that you did.
Okay. A lot of this, in fact, we actually didn't do as much environmental testing as we were planning. Havix Pico, which is, oh, by the way, I'm going to be launching one at layer 1. It's going to be a very small payload, but you're welcome to come and check it out. And that I'm actually going to do environmental testing on. But the wiki is gigantic. If you go to wiki032.la, I have all the simulations showing where we estimate it would go and all this craziness, but like, oh my god, so much. Right, almost there. Here we go. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing soon, probably actually this week or next week, is environmental testing, where I'm going to use dry ice, cool down a chamber, and have the beacon inside or have the radio inside, and then pump the air out to simulate vacuum and to simulate really cold conditions, and see if the electronics can live through that. There's many different techniques that you can do. I've been asked about radiation. Radiation is not a big deal up there. The Earth's magnetic field totally helps you. The most you get is like 8 or 10 times the regular dose you would get on Earth, and that's actually really not a lot. Yeah, there's going to be a lot more stuff about environmental at the layer 1 talk. It's going to be much more organized. Well, my server's down, but these would show you the current estimations on where it would land. There's a really cool simulator. You can run a predictor and put in information. This is built by, this is designed by a few guys in Stanford. No, not Stanford. I'm sorry, Cambridge. Uh-oh, broken. This is what happens when you run your own distribution of it. There's some really cool, this is actually some really cool data. This is plotting altitude versus time of other flights. This is a bunch of people's flights.
Which one's yours?
That's not in there. This page hasn't even been updated since we launched. And this is the descent. Some interesting stuff. What else? There's no need. Yeah. So and then there's all sorts of video and pictures of the recovery and whatnot. Right? So, yeah, that's really it. I don't really have much else. Do you guys have any questions?
So in Nullspace, you're able to design and actually manufacture your own circuits?
Yeah, we have a PCB board maker. We can cut out PCB boards. We can solder them. We can test them. There's all sorts of test equipment. We have every piece of test equipment you could think of. We have it. Other than a network element.
If I were to design one, I can go and...
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, to new people, we encourage it. If you have a circuit design, you're more than welcome to bring it. We'll totally help you cut it out and solder it together.
What layout software do you guys? What layout type files does your?
Any Gerber file, like whatever your software will generate the Gerber file. So whatever you generate, we can work with. If you have, a lot of people use Eagle and then generate the Gerber file and just mill it out right there. We can even do through-hole plating. We bought big through-hole plating chemical and whatnot. I don't know how to turn on